Welcome to today's explainer. If you've ever felt like you're just stuck on this wildly frustrating dating merry-go-round, well, you are absolutely in the right place. Today, we're going to put on our clinical psychologist hats, look at some hard data, and decode our romantic blueprints. We're going to figure out exactly why so many of us literally keep repeating the exact same toxic relationship patterns.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our clinical session outline for today. We're going to start with the intake to understand the problem, move right into the diagnosis to find the root cause, unpack the pathology and the symptom, and finally, map out a solid treatment plan to actually help you break the cycle.
Step 1. The intake. Why we repeat. Let's start our session by just acknowledging a very real, very painful truth. Modern dating can be incredibly frustrating, right? That feeling of being perpetually stuck in a loop with the exact wrong kind of partner, it's just exhausting.
So here's a direct intake question, inspired by therapist Katie Morton, and it's a sentiment I know so many of us share. Why do I feel like a fly strip for dysfunctional people? Seriously, you might be sitting there wondering why you keep attracting partners who are emotionally unavailable, inconsistent, or just completely chaotic. It's incredibly painful, and it totally validates the pain of self-sabotage. But listen to me, it's not a curse. There's no bad luck here. It's actually just programming.
Which brings us to part 2, the diagnosis. Let's look at the actual psychological root cause of all these repetitive relationship struggles.
To really diagnose the issue, we've got to travel back to 1968 and talk about British psychiatrist John Bowlby. He introduced something called attachment theory, which is literally a fundamental tenet of psychology today. The whole idea here is that the way we bond with our primary caregivers when we're little kids forms a permanent, hardwired blueprint for all of our future social relationships. Basically, whatever happened in our early relationships, our brain takes that and says, okay, these are the rules for the future. It is human nature to seek out the familiar. And get this, we'll seek it out even if that familiar is deeply negative, because to our brains, familiar just equals comfort. So we go out into the world with this blueprint, and we actively hunt for dynamics that fit it perfectly. And this brilliantly illustrates how we do this. Therapist Katie Morton uses this amazing analogy for how we process relationships in real time. Imagine your connection with someone is a tightrope stretched out across a massive, deep cavern. To feel secure on that rope, your brain is subconsciously evaluating 3 things. Step 1, your view of self. You're standing on your side of the cliff thinking, do I have value? Am I actually worth wanting? Step 2, your view of the other person way across the cavern. Are they trustworthy? Are they safe? And then step 3, your view of the bond itself, the literal wire stretched between you two. Is this connection stable, or could it just snap at any second? Every single attachment style has a completely different way of answering those 3 questions.
Okay, so how do we get those styles? Well, our childhood origins directly program our adult attachment styles. If your needs were mostly met as a kid, you develop a secure style. You generally believe people are good. But what if you had neglectful parenting, where your emotional needs were just totally ignored? Well, then you develop a dismissive avoidance style. You learn pretty quickly to just solve problems alone, which gives you the worldview that you can literally only trust yourself. Then we have the anxious style. This one is born from inconsistent affection. You were never quite sure if someone would actually be there when you needed them, so you grow up doubting your own self-worth and just desperately clinging to love. Finally, disorganized attachment. This comes from an abusive or chaotic home, and it is absolutely crucial to understand that disorganized attachment is not a personal flaw. No, it is a highly confused survival strategy. The child's brain just couldn't figure out whether to run toward a terrifying caregiver for comfort or run away from them for safety. And that leaves the adult feeling chronically, constantly unsafe. All right, let's move to step 3, the pathology, the cycle. Now that we have the diagnosis, we really need to analyze the most common and honestly the most painful relational pathology that couples are dealing with today.
Now, what's really interesting about this is the crazy paradox here. Anxious and avoidant types are almost magnetically destined to attract each other. It's wild. They basically each possess exactly what the other person lacks. The avoidant is immediately drawn to the anxious person's passionate, vibrant energy. They love that enthusiasm. Meanwhile, the anxious person is just deeply attracted to the avoidant's stable, super independent demeanor. At first glance, it feels like the perfect complementary match. But underneath, they fundamentally clash in how they process fear and how they maintain security. See, the anxious person needs constant reassurance to feel safe, while the avoidant person absolutely needs isolation just to recharge their emotional battery.
And without incredibly healthy communication, this initial attraction just morphs into a devastating, vicious cycle. Let's trace how this happens. In phase 1, after a period of really intense connection, the avoidance emotional battery runs completely dry. They need alone time to recharge. Fair enough, right? But then in phase 2, the anxious partner misinterprets this totally normal solitary recharging as relationship uncertainty. They panic. They start wondering, oh my gosh, do they still love me? This shoves them right into phase 3, where, absolutely desperate for reassurance, the anxious partner starts seeking proof of love, and in doing so, relentlessly crosses the avoidance boundaries. So naturally, in phase 4, the avoidant feels incredibly overwhelmed by all this intrusion, so they shut down emotionally and refuse to communicate. And guess what? That throws the anxious partner right back into an even more intense panic. It's a literal toxic loop of clinging and withdrawing, and it just constantly triggers the deepest unhealed childhood wounds of both people.
So that brings us to section 4, the symptom, testing love and self-sabotage. Because how do these unhealed wounds actually show up when we're out there just trying to date? Well, they show up as intense, totally self-sabotaging tests.
So, the crucial point here is summarized perfectly by the philosopher Alain de Botton. This is a massive realization, folks. He says, the catastrophe you fear will happen has already happened. Just think about that for a second. In early dating, an avoidant person might subconsciously decide, hey, I can't believe your love is real, so they're going to put you through all these unhealthy tests. On the flip side, an anxious person might act out or intentionally be super difficult, just to force you to prove that you won't leave them. De Botton points out that insecure people act up because they're actually reacting to a past forgotten trauma. They keep seeing this huge catastrophe looming in their future, completely unaware that it actually belongs back in their childhood.
So how do we fix it? The absolute key to stopping this destructive symptom of self-sabotage is understanding the structure of your own anxiety. You have to do what we call repatriate the emotion. You literally must put the fear back in the past where it belongs. When you feel that overwhelming, burning urge to test your partner, or when you are just terrified they're abandoning you simply because they, went quiet for an afternoon, you have to recognize that you are projecting a childhood catastrophe onto your current present-day partner. It is your past blueprint entirely overriding your present reality.
Okay, let's move to section 5 and see how this all builds into our final treatment plan. Let's look at how we actually start healing and moving toward genuine, secure connections. So, what's the ultimate goal here? It's adopting the actionable traits of a securely attached person. And man, look at how vastly different this is from our anxious avoidant loop. A secure person pulls away from inconsistency. They don't try to compete for love or chase it around. They understand that healthy adults express what they need out loud, so they never, ever expect a partner to just magically read their mind. For the avoidant partner, you need to adopt the trait of proactively communicating. Actually tell your anxious partner when you just need a moment of solitude. It goes a long way. And for the anxious partner, you must adopt the understanding that a need for space is truly just someone recharging their battery. It is not abandonment. A secure person doesn't take their partner's mood personally. And above all else, they choose partners for who they actually are today, not as some little project they hope to fix tomorrow. I want to leave you with one final, deeply important question to think about today. What past rule is secretly running your present relationships? Seriously, I challenge you to look back at your own childhood blueprint. Are you just seeking comfort in the familiar pain of the past? Because by noticing these patterns, you take back control. You are no longer just a fly strip for dysfunction. You are an empowered individual ready to break the cycle and find the genuine, secure intimacy you actually deserve. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I absolutely cannot wait to explore more fascinating insights with you next time.